Hi, friends. I am Heidi M., and I'm joined by filmmaker Carlota Nelson from Spain. Thank you for joining me today, Carlota.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to this conversation. I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent. So you are in Spain today, is that right?
Yes, I am in
Okay.
Madrid, Spain.
So thank you for accommodating our time zone too. So Carlota, I've come to know of your work through a film that screened at Hot Docs this year called La Mirada Oculta, or for my friends in terms of English speaking, is Eyes of the Soul about photographer Cristina García Rodero. But you've been in filmmaking for a while. Maybe let's just rewind a little bit. What was your start in interest in film, and then becoming a filmmaker and a storyteller?
Well, I studied creative writing and film in Columbia College in Chicago.
Mhm.
I grew up here in Spain, but I went to study basically writing, and that's when I discovered screenwriting. And I've always, since I was little, I've always liked to hear people's stories and write them down and record them, with an old voice recorder.
Mhm.
And so I've always had this fascination by reality,
Right.
and anyway, then I started teaching here in several film schools,
Mhm.
and then I went to TV and I started writing and directing short films for a cultural and art program
Mhm.
for Telecinco, and then my first feature-length documentary called Anclados, which in English it would be Anchored,
Yes.
was premiered in 2010.
Mhm.
And I've done several along the way until this recent one. But like I tell my friends and family, I will never be prolific because all of my projects take between 4 and 6 years to make.
I was that because it seems like your affinity is towards storytelling, like you said, about real people and real topics, social, cultural. So it lends itself to documentary, but they're a labor of love of a few years. Um, how do you how do you navigate that time and space for yourself in that you are so immersed, and then eventually you have to put something together of a story for audiences to take part in?
Yes, well, I believe in doing a lot of research before I start my projects.
Mhm.
In research and speaking with people and reading, watching references and seeing how maybe those same issues have been dealt with in the past. And so I think a lot of rigor goes into the research, and it usually takes me maybe a year to prepare and then finally, put it into writing. And then obviously there's the aspect of getting the funding,
Yes.
which can take years. And in this case of the La Mirada Oculta, Eyes of the Soul, it took the producers 9 years to secure the funding.
Wow.
So that's a lot of time. So how do I navigate it? I basically work on several things at the same time.
Mhm.
Um, and then I think what happens with a lot of documentary filmmakers who, like myself, get immersed so much in this one project, uh, once it's premiered, and I mean that's why we do it, right? To end up sharing it with others. That's when our work is complete.
Mhm.
And then you have these terrible baby blues because you've been carrying this project for so long, and then it's, you know, it's out in the world and it's not yours anymore.
Right.
So
It does. It does sound like a very intensive process and labor. So you mentioned Eyes of the Soul, La Mirada Oculta, which I love the title in Spanish, by the way. It's
mm,
just a little more poetic in my opinion. Um, so my understanding is that you met your subject of the film, Cristina García Rodero, who's a prolific photographer, years ago at the Burning Man Festival. And from there, did you develop a relationship with her that allowed you to get to this point?
yes, well, like many people, I knew of her work long before I met her in person.
Mhm.
And she's shied away from being a public persona,
Right,
unlike other photographers. So, you know, and back then in '89, when her first book was published, España
right.
Oculta, um, my mother used to buy, there were always copies of that book laying around the home, because my mother enjoyed giving it to her friends, to her foreign friends when they came to visit Spain and
Mhm.
us. And I was just fascinated. I would spend hours looking at these photographs. Um, and I think that she taught me how to see,
Right.
uh, way back then. And then if we fast forward, that was in '89. So if we fast forward to 2001,
Mhm.
I met her by chance. I didn't know who she was when I first met her in a sandstorm
Right.
in the desert of Nevada. And you know, we were advised by the organization to head back to our camps because this sandstorm was going to be very strong, and we were going to lose visibility, and it was very easy to get lost in the desert, and our equipment would be ruined. So we were on our way back, and I saw this figure crouched down, hovered over a whole bunch of cameras,
Mhm.
and I walked up to this person and I said, you know, are you okay? And she said, yes. Well, in Spanish, no, sí, sí. And I said, do you know that there's a big sandstorm coming? And she's like, yes. You know, everyone was going inside their camps and tents and RVs, and she was there waiting, you know, to see what
Mm.
was going to happen. So I said, do you where's your camp? And she's like, I sleep in my car and I have no idea where it is. And I said, why don't you come with me to the camp, and after the sandstorm, then we can go with you to find the car.
Right.
She was pretty hesitant about that because I think she really wanted to stay there, but she was also seeing how there was no visibility. So she followed me to the camp and she ended up staying with us. And I
Right.
think it was on the second or third day because she would come in and out, and and we would have a meal together and she was off again. And it wasn't until the second or third day that one of my crew members said, "But Cristina, what is your full name?"
Mhm.
And when she said Cristina García Rodero, my jaw dropped. This was my heroine since I was, since '89, and I could not believe that I had already shared all those moments with her, and she was there, right there.
Mhm.
And she still tells me that hug that I gave her, because I just, went full force and just grabbed her. She says that, she can still feel it in her ribs,
Yeah. Well, she's a
And
lady.
yes. And since then, 2001, we went back together to the Burning Man Festival the year later. And my film crew and I we were the first Spanish media that were allowed to go, and we
Right.
thought we were so cool,
Yes.
And she had been there already like 3 or 4 times before we were.
Mhm.
But anyway, so I went with her the next year, and and we just became friends. She would invite me to her exhibits, and I would, invite her over for dinner, or we would go and watch a film together. And so, we established this really nice friendship. And it was in 2010 when my first documentary, Anchored, was premiered, that she went to see it at the cinema. And she
Mhm.
called me later and she said, "Ay, niña, I loved it, and let me take you out for a drink, and we can celebrate it." And so we did. And in during that dinner, she asked me what my next project was going to be. And I said, Cristina, I would love to make a documentary about you because nothing has been done before.
Mhm.
And I want people to experience the Cristina that I know, the one behind the camera. And, she threw a fit. She was so mad at me. She said, knowing me, how can you ask me something like that? Like, I have nothing to say. I am not interesting at all. My work speaks for itself. Like,
Right.
no, like, and 1 minute in front of your camera is 1 minute less that I have behind mine. And no, no, absolutely no, and no, no, no. And I said, okay, 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 it's fine. Let's just drop it. That's okay. We're still friends.
Yes.
And I think that she just saw like my face of sadness or disappointment. That at the end of the meal, she said, "You really want to do this, don't you?" And I
Mhm.
said, "Yeah, I really want to do this. I think the world deserves, to know who you are and see your photographs and your work and the way you work." And she said, "Bueno, if it makes you happy, then okay,
Mhm.
I'll let you do it." And it's been really an honor because it's not that she hasn't had propositions like this before.
Mhm. Right.
She's had hundreds of propositions, but she just couldn't care less. She just,
Right.
she did it because she knows me, she respects me, and we get along, and she knows that, I was going to apply this same, rigor and research and
Right.
respect. But she's just said no, that it's not interesting to her, which is another reason why I love her, and I admire her.
Yeah, and I wanted you to share those stories because it's so evident when seeing the film. I saw it at Hot Dogs, as I was mentioning to you offline, and I went with a friend of mine, and we just felt like, we want to hang out with Christina because she's such a force. And you can tell there's a relationship between her and you, and I guess the team now as well, in that how she comes across as very authentic.
Mm,
She's not worried that she's being followed by cameras or anything. She's just doing her work when you're on the ground with her, whether it's in Spain or in India or anywhere else. And it's that energy that came through in the storytelling, and I appreciated how she also is part narrating the journey. Was that I think you mentioned in the Q&A that you also had to record her. You did an interview with her and you had to compile a lot of that for the film.
yes. I always knew that there were like three main ingredients. Obviously, her work, and then her creative process. The way she works,
Yes.
and then just her whole philosophy about work, which is her philosophy about life itself.
Mm-hmm.
And because I wanted to really stray away from the biopic, and have her sit down and do like a classic interview. So although we did sit her down for these interviews, I think we interviewed her. We had like 4 or 5 long conversations, maybe 2 or 3 hours
Mm-hmm.
each time. And so the labor of love was then, to listen
Yeah.
to all of these things and then try to piece them together and weave them into the story and create the script. And and then so and the editor, Clara Martinez Malagelada, was an tremendous force as well. and a wonderful companion, you
Yeah.
know, during the editing. And she also, you know, I credit her in the film as collaborating with the script, because I think a lot of times the editors, you know, they say a documentary, you know, the final version is really written in the editing room. And
Mhm.
because she went way beyond her job and really you know, rolled up her sleeves and worked very hard. And it was just we really worked Cristina inspired us to work in the same way.
Right.
Like when I was you know, filming, I also, she always says that she needs to be very close to what she's photographing. She
Mhm.
needs to, you know, smell and feel and listen to the subject, you know, or to whatever is going on. And I knew that I had to adapt the filming like Cristina does
Mhm.
to her photographs or her subjects. I had to be very, very close, obviously not get in her way, let her work. There's nothing in the film that's directed per se. Like you know, I never said, you know, go here and act like you're taking a photograph. She was working and we were just basically trying to keep up with her and following her. But Clara and I worked a lot from the heart. And because Cristina is, you know, so poetic without even pretending to or
Mhm.
intending to. So a lot of the things that she spoke about in these long conversations really inspired us in terms of how to work with all that material. So when she talked about fear, you know, how the photographer can't be afraid,
Yes.
and you just have to suck it up and keep going. Um, so I don't know if you remember, but there was a very, very like heavy duty fiesta in the north of
Yes.
Spain.
Uh-huh.
It's like a Mad Max. And we would watch this sequence and we would say, you know, how are we feeling when we're watching this? And we're like, you know, it's scary. And
Mhm.
so we thought, well, maybe we can bring all of the fear-based interview into this section, you know. So we really worked you know, with what we were seeing and what we were feeling, and then extracting those same emotions into each fiesta.
I'm glad you said that as well, because I think that's sort of what we were talking about with my friend and I, in terms of, you know, you put us on the ground, so to speak, with Cristina, from the point of view of the cameras and how we're going with her. And also, it's very, at least in my opinion, it's a very sensorial film, because there's music that complements the film really, really great. And then there's the visuals, right? But with the visuals and the music, and then hearing Cristina also kind of tell us what's going on and what she's thinking about the world and life, we're just on this really great journey where I'm hearing, I'm seeing, and I'm almost smelling, especially when you're like by those scenes with fire, you know?
Mm,
And
mm.
I think that is now that you mentioned, you kind of take a point from how Christina takes photos, it kind of comes through in the filmmaking. Um,
Yes.
so I appreciate that really, really much. So maybe let's talk a little bit about your composer, Victoria de la Vega, because we really enjoyed the music and how you came to collaborate with her.
She is I've been so fortunate to surround myself with this most amazing team of people, not only talented, you know, in their professions, but also talented humans, you know,
Mm-hmm.
human beings. She's a young composer from Madrid.
Mm-hmm.
She's Spanish, but she's been working for Hans Zimmer, legendary soundtrack composer in Santa Monica in California for, I think, for 7 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And my producer, Jose Maria Morales, when we were thinking about, music, he said, I've worked with this young composer and she's really, really, really good. And she also, worked on several documentaries of mine. You might want to have a conversation or look her up and see how you feel.
Mhm.
And well, that's what I did. And she came to visit her family in Spain, I think maybe like, yeah, 3 or 4 years ago. And we met up and I told her the project and, we said, we don't have the budget that, to pay you what you deserve and what you normally probably ask for or receive. But this is the project and this is my idea. And a lot of these fiestas have their own music. So, I would like to respect that. And I really want everyone in the film to work from the heart and from the gut.
Mhm.
And so she said, yes, obviously she knew Cristina's work. She was on board from day one. And she went, like everyone else that worked in the film, like, beyond their task. We would, Clara and I actually would send her sequences
Okay.
of the film and with a reference of music.
Mhm.
And she would receive that and then so we would then talk about it and we would watch it together, although she was in Los Angeles and I was, in Spain or India or wherever I was at the time. And I said this, I going back to that scary sequence where she talks about her fears. I said I want fear to come across. I want it to be scary. I want it to be, and then she would compose something and propose it to me, and we would talk about it. And so we would work like that, like by
Mhm.
sequence.
Nice.
And what one of the main directions that I gave for Victoria, for Clara, and for Juan Gonzalez, who's the director of photography,
Yes.
I said, Cristina is rock and roll, and and I want this film to have a lot of rhythm. I want it to be, in essence, like her,
Mhm.
like just this force of nature, and traveling all the time and kind of like a music video.
Mhm.
And I really want it to have rhythm and I want to break, like after like this like very strong sequence. I want us to like come down again and then go up. So a lot of different rhythms was very important for me, and to finish the film at a time, at a moment where the audience wasn't expecting, it to be
Mhm.
the end. I wanted
Right.
them to to
One
to
more.
want more, which is what happens when you're with Cristina. You you
Right.
you you don't want it to end.
That's so lovely. And I think that's the case. We weren't sure when it was going to end. I was like, that's it? Oh, okay. Now I got to go on deep dive more of and learn more about Christina, which, I think I would say if I hadn't seen a post about one of the photography schools here, I think from one of the universities here, I might have missed the documentary because it was hot dogs is so huge of a festival. There's so many things to see. But it was the last film of the festival, and it was a really great note to end on, pun
Oh,
intended, music and energy wise.
thank
Um,
you.
so, what would you say? Like, it's been a few years that you also have a friendship with Christina, but what would you say traveling through Spain with her and also India and other places, making this film? What would you say your team and you have learned aside from her work ethic and you know and how she works? What else have you learned about her that maybe not everybody can
Mm.
perceive, or anything surprised you along the way?
Yeah, we were all surprised by the fact that she's been going what she does is she doesn't go once to a festival. Because
Mm-hmm.
there's always something that she believes she's missed. Because if she's dedicated that one day to photographing in a plaza or on a street, she leaves thinking, well, what happened on that side street? What did I miss,
Mm-hmm.
like 2 hours later? She's the first one to arrive and she's the last one to leave. She usually arrives like 3 or 4 hours. She wants to be there and kind of live and breathe,
Yeah.
all the preparations of the fiesta. And she's the last to leave. And it's not that she just goes there and starts taking photographs. Behind each fiesta, there's years of research and talking to people and going and listening and asking questions. We discovered that I mean, we literally she doubled the average age of the film crew, not so much myself, but the rest of the crew. And we literally were just dragging our feet trying to follow her. She works so fast and moves so fast. Um, so that was very surprising and something beautiful because being able to accompany her to these little tiny villages throughout Spain, villages that she's been to since the 70s. It's so
Yes.
nice to see how well she's received, how
Mm,
she's received by her first name.
right.
And most of these people don't know that she's such an amazing photographer,
Mm,
but they know how she works and how she respects what is going on. Cristina talks a lot about the photographers who are vultures,
right.
who kind of just, they see something interesting and they go in and they take their picture and they go out and
Yeah.
they could care less about what happens later on. And because Cristina doesn't do that and her approach is, to go in, but then to leave room for other photographers or obviously respect what is going on and not get in anybody's way. And throughout Spain, she's loved and cherished because of this, because
Mm-hmm.
of her respect for others and her closeness. And she just doesn't, and she likes to participate as well,
Right.
and if there's time and everyone's drinking wine, and then she,
Sure.
puts her camera aside and
Yes.
and 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 it's very beautiful that we were very, very surprised because that this happens in Spain is not, that much of a surprise because she's been going for years and years. But to go to India
Mm-hmm.
and to maybe travel for 4 hours outside of a big city and arrive at this tiny little village that's not even on the map and see her get out of the car and children and families and elders come to her and calling her by her name, Cristina. Then, she doesn't understand what they're saying and they don't understand her, but that they also receive her
Recognize. Yeah.
because they know that she goes there and she takes photographs and she respects and she enjoys what's going on.
Right. I
And
think.
and
Sorry to interrupt. You were saying is that room she leaves for people to be themselves and not be intrusive.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. And there's very few photographers, and that's why I wanted to include this in the film during the pandemic, during lockdown here in Spain, which was very heavy duty and for a long period of time. She was just going bonkers. She hated that situation of being locked up, and because she has so many projects open and she just wants to complete them while she still has the strength. So for her, it was a terrible, terrible time.
Mhm.
But she did manage to print photographs of people she had taken pictures of in India and Spain, and so when we decided to go to India, she made sure to take these pictures with her.
Mhm.
And we arrived to this village, and and I think it's so beautiful to then share, those people who were generous with her. There's very few photographers that do that
Right.
actually go back to give the pictures, because at
Exactly.
that particular village, she didn't have anything to do work-wise. She just wanted to go there. So that woman had pictures. And that woman doesn't know who Cristina García Rodero is. She doesn't know that she's a Magnum photographer. She doesn't know that she's won the most prestigious prizes. She knows that she's a woman who comes every so often and takes pictures, you
Yes,
know?
exactly. And I think that's kind of what I really appreciate about Christina. You know, folks should know that she's in her 70s, but she's being very um, emboldened and empowered on her own, and being a very independent person for a long time. And I feel like she's been ahead of the curve for a lot of us, and it's nice to see how she continues to push forth. And I do appreciate the moments that you just mentioned in terms of her connecting with the communities, regardless of where she is, and that people really seem to appreciate um,
Yes.
her and her energy, and the fact that she just seems to have a really good time.
She does.
you
She
know,
does. She enjoys it. It's what she enjoys the most,
yes,
you know.
absolutely.
Yeah, participating and like she says, I need to be close. I need to participate. So of those who are moved by what they're doing. So I'm moved, and then people who see my photographs are moved. So it's all a question of, these emotions that are constantly, constantly at play.
Yeah, I mean, the film opens up so many things for people who are interested, whether you're into photography or just, anthropologically speaking. There's so much to discover from this film. So what happens now, Carlota? What happens with the film? Are you taking it to other festivals or
Yeah, yes. Well, we just came back from Hot Docs, which was just such an honor to be there. One of the most, if not the most, important documentary film festival in the world. So just being there was, quite amazing on a personal level and professional level. And now we've been selected to go to two of the most prestigious film festivals in Latin America, in Guadalajara, Mexico, and in Lima, Peru.
nice?
And yeah, so and just last week, this mythical book that Cristina talks about, the one that's been sold out for years, for more than 20 years, secondhand copy can cost you almost $1,000. She just republished that.
Oh, wow.
So the new book is out. The new exhibit of España Oculta with new photographs is at the Fine Arts Museum here in Madrid. And we're going to start an itinerant, like traveling show of her exhibit, her book, and the documentary here in Spain, and then in Europe, and hopefully we're already talking about taking it possibly to Toronto.
Oh my God,
I
please
can't,
do.
yes, I can't say much about it, but there are amazing people helping me with this. Yes.
So we'll stay in contact so we can follow up if that comes our way.
Yes.
Carlota, a pleasure to speak with you. I can stay for another hour, but we have to wrap up at some point.
Of course.
Muchísimas gracias. Un placer.
Well, un placer, Heidi. Muchísimas gracias a ti por todo el trabajo que haces.
Gracias.